The new beginning. The moving truck had barely pulled out of the driveway when Jake finally allowed himself to breathe. The boxes were stacked neatly in the living room, their names scribbled in bold Sharpie. Kitchen, books, Serena's uniforms. The late afternoon sun warmed the white brick of their new 2-story house, casting long shadows across the lawn as the sprinklers kicked on with a soft hiss. It was exactly the kind of neighborhood people dreamed of raising a family in. Quiet, orderly, suburban. Every mailbox looked the same. Lawns trimmed like they were measured with rulers. Driveways clean enough to eat off. Jake had grown up in a cramped apartment with paper-thin walls and parking wars. To him, this place was a kind of luxury he never imagined he'd touch. But it wasn't just his. This was their fresh start. Serena emerged from the garage in a pair of sweatpants and a dusty Howard University hoodie. Her hair tied back in a puffball bun. She was carrying a box marked Fragile Metals, cradling it like it held glass hearts. "You know," she said, glancing at the street, "I feel like we just moved into a real-life brochure." Jake grinned. "Only with better furniture." The neighborhood was nearly silent, save for the distant hum of a leaf blower and the faint bark of a dog somewhere down the block. A woman across the street was watering her rose bushes. She paused, watching Serena for a few seconds too long, then resumed without waving. Jake noticed but said nothing. Their home sat in the middle of a looped street, part of the Fairmeadow Estates, a gated HOA community nestled just outside Austin. The name made it sound like a golf course or a vineyard. It had come highly rated for safety, family friendliness, and proximity to both the city and base. For Jake, who worked remotely as a cybersecurity analyst, it was ideal. For Serena, it was a much-needed anchor after years of deployments, barracks, and base housing. Inside, the kitchen smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. Jake unpacked mugs while Serena walked the perimeter, taking in the feel of the place. Her eyes lingered on the bay window looking out onto the street. "I think the neighbor was watching me when I brought the box in," she said offhandedly. Jake shrugged. "Probably just curious. We're the new faces on the block." She said, unconvinced. "You saw her look. Didn't even wave." Jake didn't respond. It wasn't the first time. During the open house a month ago, he'd noticed how the realtor seemed more talkative when it was just him asking questions. But when Serena spoke up, confident, poised, professional, the agent had faltered. There was always something subtle. Change in tone. An extra question. Micro delay. It didn't matter. They had the keys now. This was home. The first official HOA letter arrived 2 days later, tucked inside their mailbox along with a glossy welcome pamphlet. Reminder. It read in a serif font too elegant for its content. Trash bins must be stored out of sight by 8 p.m. on collection day. Repeated violations may result in fines. Jake looked at the envelope again. No names, just resident. He checked the time. 7:52 p.m. "Is this a joke?" he muttered, flipping it over. Serena peeked over his shoulder and rolled her eyes. "They're really starting early." Jake chuckled. "We've been here less than 72 hours. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said dryly. That weekend, while Serena was out getting new blinds installed, Jake walked their dog, Max, a lazy golden retriever with more curiosity than coordination. As they strolled past rows of uniform homes, he noticed a group of neighbors chatting near a driveway. A man raised his hand in a wave. "New in lot 42, right?" the man called. Jake smiled. "That's us. Well, welcome to Fairmeadow. I'm Tom, a board vice chair." Jake shook his hand. "Jake, my wife Serena's on base today. She's active duty." Tom's smile flickered for a moment, barely visible. "Ah, military. Thank her for her service." There it was again. Politeness so polished it barely concealed discomfort. Jake forced a polite nod. As he walked away, he heard one of the women murmur behind him. "Didn't know they were renting that house." They weren't. They'd bought it in full. Serena's VA benefits had helped with the down payment. But Jake didn't stop to correct them. Later that night, as they unboxed Serena's uniform cases, She pulled out her framed commendations and set them carefully on the hallway shelf. "Do you think we should hang these?" she asked. Jake glanced over. "Why wouldn't we?" He paused, just wondering if it's too visible. He looked at her, studying her face. Strong but tired. Always calculating. Even here, in the place that was supposed to be safe. "Serena," he said gently, "you earned every one of those. This house isn't theirs. It's ours." She nodded slowly. "Then let's hang them high." As the night settled in, with their boxes slowly turning into a home, the silence outside grew heavier than comforting. The porch lights from neighboring houses glowed like watchful eyes, and somewhere behind a curtain, someone was always watching. They were home, but not yet welcome. The quiet undercurrent. By the second week, the rhythm of their new life had begun to settle. Serena had started commuting to Fort Cavazos twice a week to wrap up her military transition paperwork. On the other days, she stayed home with Jake, organizing the garage, turning the third bedroom into a home gym, and preparing for civilian life. But the neighborhood didn't seem to settle with them. Started with the notes. Neat, folded papers slipped into their mailbox or left under the welcome mat, unsigned but clearly official in tone. "Please adhere to HOA lawn color guidelines. Grass is beginning to brown near driveway. Outdoor workout equipment must be stored indoors after use. Driveway parking is discouraged. Guests should use designated visitor lots." Jake read them aloud one evening, holding them like contaminated evidence. "Are they serious? Serena, your jump rope and a couple kettlebells were out for like 20 minutes. Serena didn't flinch. She sat on the couch, flipping through a packet of VA healthcare forms. "They're serious. But not because of the rules. You think it's us." "I know it is," she said, looking up. "Come on, babe. If I looked like I just stepped off an HGTV episode, we wouldn't be getting these." Jake sighed. "I was hoping this place would be different." "You mean colorblind different?" Serena's tone was calm but sharp. "There's no such thing, Jake. Not in a place with HOA boards and unspoken codes." Still, they tried to keep things smooth. Waved at every neighbor. Took Max on longer walks. Paid their HOA dues a month early. But none of it softened the stares. One Thursday afternoon, Jake returned from a quick coffee run to find Serena in the front yard. Arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Across the street stood a woman in her early 50s with perfectly styled blonde hair, beige yoga pants, and a clipboard. She was watching Serena like a hawk who spotted something unfamiliar in her territory. Jake walked up. "Hey, everything okay?" The woman didn't blink. "Hi there," she said, pasting on a tight-lipped smile. "I'm Karen Whitmore. I'm on the HOA board. Just doing some compliance walkthroughs." Serena nodded politely. "Afternoon." Karen tilted her head. "Are you staying here or?" "She lives here," Jake said, voice flat. "This is my wife." Something in Karen's face twitched. She looked between them, trying to recalibrate. "Ah, I see. Well, just a friendly reminder about keeping garage doors closed when not in use. We had a break-in a few months ago." "We're good, thanks," Serena said, voice steady. "Garage was open because I was moving boxes." Karen gave a tight nod and scribbled something on her clipboard. "Of course. Just looking out for everyone's safety." She turned and walked off, the scent of her designer perfume trailing behind her like an invisible wall. Jake clenched his jaw. "She just asked if you were a guest." Serena placed a hand on his chest. "Let it go. That's what she wants," reaction. But it wasn't easy to ignore. The next morning, a violation notice appeared on their door, this time a printed letter from the HOA citing repeated parking infractions. It included grainy black and white photos of Serena's car parked in front of their house after 10 p.m. "Who's photographing us at night?" Jake muttered, crumpling the paper. "This is insane." "I parked in front of our own house," Serena said. "What is this, a curfew?" Jake looked at her. She was dressed in a crisp black blazer, ready for a meeting at the base. Her badge hung around her neck. Her face was composed, but her eyes burned. "It's not about rules," she said. "It's about control. I've seen this before. Same tactics, different battlefield." At the next HOA board meeting, Jake decided to attend. Serena stayed home. She didn't want to give them another reason to turn the spotlight on her. Inside the community hall, the air was thick with cologne, perfume, and passive aggression. Everyone seemed to know each other. There were jokes, chuckles, wine glasses clinking. When Jake sat down near the back, a few heads turned. Karen stood at the front, flipping through a slide deck. She spoke with cheerful authority about landscaping budgets, paint color approvals, and holiday decor standards. Then came the community concerns segment. One older man, Mr. Harlan, raised a complaint about increased noise levels near Lot 42. Jake raised his hand. "Lot 42 is our home," he said evenly. "The only noise I've heard is our dog barking once or twice, or maybe Serena working out during the day." Karen quickly interjected. "Of course, no one is accusing anyone. These are just general concerns." Jake didn't let it slide. "General concerns with specific addresses listed?" An awkward silence followed. A few people avoided his gaze. After the meeting, Karen approached him near the exit. "You know," she said, trying her friendly tone again, "I just want to make sure everyone feels welcome." Jake looked her dead in the eyes. "Then stop treating us like we don't belong here." She blinked, lips parting, but he walked away before she could respond. That night, Serena was quiet at dinner. Jake updated her on the meeting, on Karen, on the neighbors' coded comments. "This isn't about them liking us," he said. "It's about us having the right to exist here." Serena nodded slowly. "I've been in combat zones that felt less tense than this place." Jake reached for her hand. "We can leave if you want." "No," she said firmly. "I'm not moving just because someone's uncomfortable with my skin or my rank. Let them look. I've dealt with worse than petty suburban politics." They cleared the table together. Max curled up at their feet. Outside, porch lights flickered on one by one, illuminating identical homes with unequal welcomes. In one of those homes, behind a curtain, Karen watched their house like it offended her existence. She didn't know yet. She wasn't dealing with just any resident. She was dealing with an army captain who'd led soldiers through war zones and didn't flinch in the face of fire. The war was quiet now. But it was coming. The incident. It happened on a Monday afternoon. The sun was high and unrelenting, baking the sidewalks of Fairmeadow Estates. Most of the neighborhood had retreated indoors, blinds drawn, central AC humming. Serena had taken the day off. Her paperwork was nearly done, and she wanted to tackle the garage. She wore a tank top and cargo shorts, sweat dampening her back as she stacked boxes and wiped down old gear. Jake was out running errands, and Max was sprawled inside on the tile floor. Music played quietly from a Bluetooth speaker on the workbench. It was a normal day, mundane even, until the police showed up. Serena was crouched beside a storage bin when she heard it, gravel crunching under tires, followed by the sharp clack of two car doors. She stood and turned. Two patrol officers, one male, one female, were walking up the driveway, hands at their belts. The man had his sunglasses on. The woman wore a neutral expression that barely concealed discomfort. "Ma'am," the male officer called out. "We got a report of a suspicious person on the property. Are you the homeowner?" Serena blinked. For a split second she thought he might be joking. Then she saw the look on his face. She stepped forward, wiping her hands on a rag. "I live here. This is my house." The officer's eyes scanned her from head to toe, noting the sweat, the workout clothes, the absence of makeup or identification. "Do you have ID on you, ma'am?" Serena kept her voice calm. "Sure. Give me 1 second." She turned, walked into the house, and came back with her wallet. No sudden movements, no raised voice. Just slow, deliberate control, something the army had trained into her long ago. She handed the officer her military ID and her driver's license. He took them without comment. His partner leaned over to glance at them, then whispered something into the radio clipped to her vest. The male officer's tone shifted. "Captain Serena Davis." Serena nodded. "That's right." There was a beat of silence. The air felt like it thickened. "Well, this all checks out," he muttered, handing back her IDs. "Sorry about that, ma'am. We had a call from a concerned resident. Said there was someone unfamiliar going through the garage." Serena stared at him. "Did they also mention that the unfamiliar person was black?" He hesitated, lips twitching. Ma'am, I'm not at liberty to discuss the caller's intent." Behind him, the second officer seemed uncomfortable. She glanced up the street, where a familiar figure had emerged from her front door. "Karen." Serena's jaw clenched. Karen stood on her porch, arms folded tightly, sunglasses covering her eyes. She didn't approach. She didn't say a word. But it was clear she had made the call. Serena turned to the officers. "You're dismissed. Unless you're charging me with something, I'd like to get back to my own garage." The male officer muttered an apology. The female nodded once. Then the two turned and walked back to their cruisers. As they pulled away, Serena stood still, fists clenched at her sides. She could feel her heartbeat in her ears. Not fear, fury. Across the street, Karen remained frozen. Jake pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later and found Serena sitting on the front step. She looked calm, but he knew her too well. Her eyes were cold, locked on a fixed point across the street. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "They called the cops on me," she said flatly. Jake's heart sank. "What?" "Suspicious person in the garage." She said it like it was the punchline to a terrible joke. "They showed up, asked for ID. I gave them my badge." Jake stood, hands on his hips, rage creeping up his spine. "You're kidding me." "Nope." Karen made the call. She's still standing there, pretending she didn't. Jake turned to look. Karen had moved only slightly, now standing behind her porch column, pretending to adjust a planter. Jake started to step forward, but Serena caught his wrist. "No. No. I don't need you to defend me," she said calmly. She saw the badge. That was enough. Jake looked down at her. "You're just going to let her get away with it." "Oh, she won't get away with it," Serena said, standing slowly. "I've already called the base legal office. I've documented everything. If she wants to play games, she picked the wrong opponent." At that moment, a few more neighbors peeked out from behind blinds and doorways. Word had spread. The police had been seen. Phones had been out. There were murmurs, whispers. The spectacle was no longer private. Serena walked to the mailbox and opened it, retrieving yet another folded paper. This one didn't come from the post office. It was another HOA notice, unsigned just like before. She read it, snorted, and handed it to Jake. "Resident has been noted improperly dressed while working outdoors. Please maintain standards of neighborhood decorum." Jake crushed the paper in his hand. "This is beyond harassment." Serena's gaze hardened. "Then we treat it like a mission." The next morning, Serena appeared at the HOA office in full uniform. Pressed service blouse, polished insignia, boots that echoed down the tile floors. Her ribbons gleamed under the fluorescent light. The HOA receptionist nearly spilled her coffee. Karen was there too, sorting papers behind the front desk. When she looked up and saw Serena, her face drained of color. "Good morning," Serena said crisply. "I'm here to file a formal complaint. I've already consulted my legal counsel." Karen tried to speak, but her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "Also," Serena continued, pulling out a folder, "these are printouts of the notes left at our home, a record of HOA citations, and the time-stamped security footage of the police visit. I'll be submitting this to the Homeowners Association's governing board and, if necessary, the local civil rights office." She placed the folder on the counter. Karen didn't say a word. Because there was nothing to say. The aftermath. The fallout was swift. By the end of the week, word had spread beyond Fairmeadow Estates. Footage from a neighbor's Ring camera. 2 police officers questioning Serena on her own driveway. Her calm hand presenting a military ID. Had found its way to a local veterans Facebook group. Within 48 hours, it had over 100,000 shares. Army captain harassed in her own neighborhood. HOA member calls cops on decorated veteran for being black. This is how we treat our soldiers. The backlash was relentless. Karen tried to stay quiet, but the online sleuths worked fast. Her name, her role on the HOA board, and her property address were all public record. She disabled her Facebook, then her Instagram. By Tuesday, a for sale sign appeared on her lawn, the plastic post digging awkwardly into her flowerbed like a white flag. Serena never acknowledged it directly. She didn't gloat. She didn't post. She didn't even mention the article that quoted her commanding officer calling her an exemplary leader who represents the highest ideals of the U.S. Army. She simply kept her routine, morning jogs, grocery trips, dog walks with Max, and let the storm pass on its own. But Jake saw it differently. This wasn't just about Karen. It was about a system. Tight-lipped neighbors, weaponized HOA rules, unspoken racial lines drawn through perfectly paved streets. Fairmeadow hadn't expected someone like Serena. And certainly not someone who wouldn't back down. At the next HOA board meeting, the air was very different. The hall was crowded. New faces had shown up, quietly curious or maybe emboldened by what had happened. There were nods of recognition when Jake and Serena entered. Whispers of, "That's her." Few claps even. Karen predictably was gone. Her nameplate on the board table was missing. The president, a balding man in a salmon-colored polo, opened with an apology. "We regret any misunderstandings or discomfort caused to our residents," he said, without naming Serena or the incident. "Our community should be a place of respect, dignity, and inclusion." It was a lukewarm statement, but it was something. After the meeting, a woman in her 30s approached Serena. She had an infant in a stroller and a nervous energy about her. "I just wanted to say," the woman said softly, "thank you. I've lived here for 3 years and I've never seen anyone stand up to them like that. You've made it easier for people like me to speak up." Serena smiled and shook her hand. "You don't have to thank me. You just have to remember this. They only win when you stay quiet." In the months that followed, the tone of the neighborhood shifted. Subtly but noticeably. The notes stopped. The citations disappeared. Jake and Serena began receiving dinner invites from families who had once watched them from behind curtains. A retired Marine who lived 2 blocks over stopped by one day with a 6-pack and stayed for hours, swapping stories about base life with Serena. Even Max seemed more relaxed. His tail wagged more freely on walks now that the tension in the air had eased. Serena started volunteering with a local program that helped veterans transition into civilian life. She led workshops, helped them with resumes, and told her story. How even in uniform you could still be viewed as an outsider in your own country. Jake watched her with quiet pride. Every time she stood at the front of a room, shoulders straight, voice clear. He saw what the HO had never seen. Not just a soldier, not just a homeowner, but a woman who refused to be made small. One crisp fall morning, Jake stepped outside to retrieve the paper. The sky was pale blue, the air sharp with the smell of cut grass. He paused at the mailbox, looking around. Across the street, a moving truck was parked in Karen's old driveway. A young couple, a white man and a South Asian woman, were unloading boxes. Jake smiled. He walked across the street and extended a hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Jake. My wife Serena, and I live over there in lot 42. The man returned the handshake warmly. "Nice to meet you, man. I'm David. This is Rena. First house." "Yep. Nervous as hell," David laughed. Jake grinned. "Don't be. It gets better once you realize you belong here as much as anyone." As he helped them carry in a box, he glanced back at his own house. Porch swept clean, Serena's flowerbed blooming, Max barking through the screen door. Not just by deed or address, but by right. That night, Serena stood in the hallway, adjusting the frame of her army commendation. The light hit the glass just right, casting a soft gold glow across the words beneath her name. Jake leaned on the doorframe. "You good?" She nodded. "Just thinking. About." She looked at him. "How it's always the quiet wars that leave the longest scars. But we're still standing." Jake stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. "Yeah," he whispered. "And we're not going anywhere." Outside, porch lights glowed in soft yellows and warm whites. No eyes hiding behind curtains. No whispers. Just the stillness of peace hard-earned. And in the driveway stood a symbol no one could mistake anymore. A flagpole raised just last week, flying the stars and stripes beneath a small army pennant. Didn't scream. Didn't shout. Simply stood tall like Serena.